Welcome to the forecast. We are the Org, and our purpose is to assimilate Star Trek for the next generation.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, make it so, make it so, make it so. Man, it doesn't show signs of stopping. And I brought me some tea Earl Grey hot. The lights are turned way down low. Make it so, make it so, make it so.
Hello, folks.
Hello.
And a Merry Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas.
Unless you're not listening to this at Christmas time, in which case...
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. But then again, it's always Christmas somewhere in the universe, probably.
Right.
Possibly. We had some Christmas greetings from Dominica.
Happy Christmas,
Happy Christmas, Dominica. Understandably, she's slightly busy and couldn't send him feedback, but if we're going to be insane and record stuff on Christmas Day, what do you expect? Grateful thanks, by the way, to James Covenant, who put together that amazing introduction, and I got his permission to use it. It was very sweet.
Thank you.
Yes, I mean, it must have taken hours to splice all that together, and he's putting together a computer game at the moment, which looks rather fun, so do check him out. Who else do we have feedback from? Oh, yes, Rod Bell, at For Lord Such on Twitter, enjoyed the Power Play coverage, although I think possibly not so much the... You had to run and hide at the arguments in the second one.
Sorry.
And speaking of arguments, we had a very short tweet from JJ saying, Troy Wharf 5 ever.
No.
Now remember, it's the season of goodwill. Oh, well, we've got that joy to come, haven't we, really? This is
Not
just
a
early
joy.
days. Oh, well, we're gonna... It's something else for us to disagree on. Wonderful. And somebody called Shane Poole recently started listening. Although whether he'll lasted long enough to have got to this podcast, I don't know. But there you are. Very curious, having done so many now. People take a while to catch up. Splendid stuff. Okay. Shall we find out what we think of conspiracy?
On the next episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation,
Don't trust anyone. Remember that, Jean-Luc.
sabotage strikes the highest ranks of the Starfleet Command
Break into security. Emergency.
and threatens the future of the entire Federation.
What is that?
But do evil parasites hold the key to this deadly conspiracy?
You'll be one of us soon.
Find out on Star Trek, The Next Generation.
So do evil parasites lie behind this conspiracy? Well, if they do, you've just spoiled the plot, you twat. Oh, dear. Never mind.
You've got the Enterprise en route to Pacifica, an ocean planet where they're supposedly doing science, but really all looking forward to a swim.
It's a jolly holiday they're off for.
Oh, it's a jolly holiday with Mary. Mary makes your heart so light.
You haven't changed a bit, have you?
Geordi tells Data a joke, which all goes a bit wrong because Data can't laugh.
One of those things where it's very cliched. You come in at the punchline so you don't hear the setup.
Yeah.
I always hate it when they do that. It's quite common, particularly in sci-fi for some reason.
And it's all very jovial on the bridge. And then there's a Code 47, which is like Starfleet's emergency channel.
Captain's eyes only, yep.
And Captain Picard is asleep, so they have to wake him up. And it's Walker. And he says hello. They have a bit of a chat, but he's like, no, you've got to go and meet me, and it's what we always considered impossible. You've got to meet me on... Do they call it Ditalix or Ditalix? I can't remember.
Ditalix.
Ditalix B.
Yes.
And you owe it to our friendship and to yourself to hear what you have to say. And don't trust anyone.
Yeah, so we've got a long-standing friend of Captain Picard's. This is his first ever mention. Dies in the same episode. So if we were doing the Babylon project here, we'd be calling him the Mitchell of the Week, because that's how they define anybody who's supposedly had a long-standing relation with the characters that you're just introduced to and then dies. It's a bit sad. He's also got very starey eyes.
He has. Yes. So, Ditalix B is a mining colony, and it's pretty much abandoned. The crew are clearly not comfortable with the fact that they've been put on diversion and they're not going to have a swim. But I think because it's this Code 47 has come through, they know that it's something they're not allowed to know about, kind of thing. So Picard beams down to a red ramp in a cave.
Yes, this is all we get to see of Ditalix, is a ramp.
Yeah. the people there, 3 people are asking him lots of questions to ascertain his identity. And they say there's a conspiracy. There have been deaths.
Including Una Karapledes.
Oh no,
What's
not
an
Una
Karapledes.
Karapledes.
I just love that name.
And they expect the Enterprise to be targeted next.
One of these conspirators, well, they're not the conspirators, these people who are worried about the conspiracy, is Captain Rix, who's our first Bolian.
Oh,
Although
right.
he's not very blue for a Bolian.
No.
He's got more of a grey. But there we are, he's classed as a
Maybe
Bolian.
he's an old Bolian.
Maybe he is, or maybe there are slightly different shades of Bolian. Like,
be.
there are different shades of human being.
Oh, well, yeah, it's logical. Why can't one of them be purple? I want the purple one!
It's rather frustrating that when they approach the planet, we're told that there are 3 other vessels orbiting, and they give their names, but you never get to see them.
No.
So there's no Spaceship of the Week, I'm afraid, because the bastards didn't show them. It's kind of a common thing in first season in particular, because they obviously hadn't built up a library of stock footage yet, so yes, you're rather stuck with the fact that you don't get to see vessels.
And they say that one of the weaknesses of the people involved in the conspiracy is a lack of memory of old times, which is why they ask Picard so many questions. And
I'd be stuck. I remember last week. Happy Easter, by the way.
And they've noticed strange patterns in the commands initiating from Starfleet and seemingly an irrational purpose. And Walter Keel says that people are changed. And Picard's like, you're not exactly giving me a lot to go on. And he's like, stay in covert touch and watch your back, Garibaldi.
Yes. Anybody gets told to watch their back, unfortunately, we go, again, our brains always go to a Babylon 5 place. Hey-hoo.
So when Picard gets back, he tells Troy. So I'm glad he's told someone. But why Troy and not Riker?
Well, he ends up talking to Riker anyway, but I suppose Troy's a logical first stop as your counsellor to get your counsel from, and you would expect her to be, have confidentiality and stuff. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Just operationally, if Picard dies, what's Troy going to do?
I suppose she breaks it to Riker then, doesn't she? But anyway.
I suppose, yeah. Anyway, I just didn't get that bit. He says he's got a task particular for Data, which Data looks very eager about, in a way that in later seasons he doesn't.
No, he's rather emotional, isn't he? He even
Yeah.
looks peed off at the computer at one point, because the computer's very strange and has
Yeah.
told him he's given him too much information. And now it's time for Who's at the...
Geordie
Yes, of course, yeah.
says that there's a disturbance in the nearby Sector 63. So they divert and go there, and it's debris from a vessel. It's no bodies, but it can only be Walter Keel's ship, the Horatio.
Mm-hmm.
So you get sort of bits of Spaceship of the Week.
Yep.
At which point that is enough proof for Picard that there is definitely something up, at which point he then tells Riker. And then you cut to Data, who's, being told to shut up, basically, by the computer, and scanning through loads of stuff. I mean, he has found abnormal patterns. And those abnormal patterns are the reshuffling of personnel, and the new personnel in key outposts and stuff are those close to Starfleet Command. But it's done very subtly, so nobody would notice unless that specifically, they were looking for that sort of thing. And he says that it will give those key people control of vital areas, and it could be a prelude to an invasion. So Picard decides that he's going to go to Starfleet Command with what he knows. So he turns up, and there's 3 people there. A sort of Columbo-ish Vulcan.
Okay, that would be Rear Admiral Savar, who was played by Henry Darrow, who was also in Voyager as Chakotay's dad.
Okay. Well, sorry, I just thought he was a Columbo-ish Vulcan. Sorry.
And they're all wearing those really odd Season Ward Admirals outfits. They've got the sort of same strange sort of sashy thing. It's very odd.
I quite like it.
Yeah, I never got used to that. Much prefer the later ones.
And then you've got Admiral Quinn.
Yeah, who were reintroduced to him. He was in Coming of Age, along with Commander Remick, who plays a key role in this story.
Yeah, he's sort of hovering around about like being a butler, isn't he? And then you've got the other guy, whose name I never caught.
Yeah, I haven't got his name down here either. He's clearly not important.
Oh, right, fair enough. They seem normal enough, although Worf is like, don't trust him. Because as a prelude to going to Starfleet Command, Picard told all the bridge crew what the situation is. And there is a callback to the one you said.
Coming of Age, yep.
Yes, in the mention of Commander Remick and Admiral Quinn. And Quinn says he wants to come aboard, where the other two invite Picard and Riker to dinner. So Picard's says to Riker, it looks like Quinn is on our side because he's trying to catch us alone. Car beams down, and Starfleet HQ is really quiet, and he's like, why is this corridor quiet? And they give some really rubbish excuse. And in the meantime, you get this really cool atmospheric music.
Ready to beam up to the Enterprise, sir?
Yes, Commander. Quite ready. Energize, Mr. Remick.
You've got Quinn, and he's looking at this Ghibli.
Alien Ghibli.
Yes.
Right.
In a box.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this atmospheric music, and he goes up. So you know that actually, although Picard thinks that Quinn is all right, Picard's wrong.
Yeah, it's quite nicely played, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But it isn't long with Quinn on the Enterprise that Picard's like, that's not Quinn. He doesn't know what I'm talking about, what I'm on about. I can tell you that's not him. But then he's looking at his box of Ghibli, and Riker comes in, and he's like, oh, we've got a superior form of life here. And then he grabs Riker, and Riker is prawned by an old man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, at this point, I got earwormed by the mighty Quinn.
Come on without, come on within. You will not see nothing like the mighty Quinn.
Because he is. Although he's also obviously a stuntman in lots of scenes. It's some of the worst directed scenes I've ever seen involving a stuntman. I mean, other than very old classic Who. Where
I was going to say, apart from John Pertwee.
Exactly. It may as well have been Terry Walsh for a week in this scene as well, to be honest.
Yes, stunts by Havoc.
Yeah.
Although I like Riker's kicks.
Yeah, Riker does some fancy kicks in the face, but all to no avail, because Admiral Quinn is too mighty.
Yes, he's the mighty Quinn. And so then Geordi comes in, and he throws Geordi through a wall.
Yeah, well, I think he hits the doors, and the doors collapse.
Okay.
Yes, looking very plywood and not very...
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but yeah.
Very MDF, really.
Yes.
But then Beverly appears and just phases him to death.
Really. Oh, well, yeah, because before that you have to have Worf being prawned as well, because it's the law.
Yes.
Mark pointed out there's actually something called, where was it, the Worf effect or something? Yes, the Worf effect. Somebody in the past has coined, which is basically... And this isn't just for Star Trek, but it's kind of the title that's stuck, is the idea that, the toughest regular has to be beaten up by the baddie of the week just to prove how tough the baddie is, which of course just makes your toughest character regular look weak. There we go. But yeah, it's quite nice that Crusher turns up in a very heroic pose and phases the shit out of him.
Yeah. So in the meantime, Picard's drinking Andorian tea on the Horatio.
Not the Horatio, it's at Starfleet HQ.
Sorry, so at Starfleet HQ, but they give a toast to the Horatio.
Yes, they do. Yes, and we get some stock footage of Starfleet HQ, the externals, which take them from Star Trek 4.
Oh, okay.
Getting their money's worth from that.
It does look a bit like a conference centre.
It does, doesn't it? Yes.
Actually, quite a lot like the old Wembley Conference Centre. I'm sure that's not it, but that's what it reminds me of. And then Picard sort of does his best to speak to the ship sort of covertly and tries for Riker, but of course, because Riker's been prawned, gets Beverly, who then talks about this, I don't know, what do you call it? Is it a tentacle?
It's a breathing
it's a gill.
Gill in Quinn's neck, which reveals that, yes, he's been possessed by an alien. Now, this is the thing, this was originally going to be about a military coup within Starfleet, so this conspiracy business was going to be completely internal. Rather than it being a prelude to invasion. But Roddenberry put his foot down and said, oh no, in the future nobody's going to be doing that sort of thing. Starfleet isn't a military organisation, blah, blah, blah. So he nixed that idea and it had to be an alien invasion instead. Which is kind of ironic considering, of course, in Deep Space Nine we get Homefront and Paradise Lost, where that's exactly what we see. And very fun it is too.
Yeah. Picard goes into dinner and they lift the lids off these things and it's all bowls of worms or maggots.
Tasty grubs.
It's like, nom, nom.
Quite why they're eating tasty grubs, it's never explained, but presumably it's something to do with the host. They rather like it or something. And the banqueting room they're in, the doors, did they look familiar?
Yes.
The doors to 10 forward.
Oh, they.
Of course, this is first season, so we haven't got 10
no
forward
10 forward,
yet. But this is right towards the end of the first season. Then obviously somebody liked those doors a lot, saved them, and used them from the second season onwards for 10 forward.
Got you. And then so Picard sort of backs out slowly into Riker, who then is like, "You're going to be one of us," and they're like, "Well, you were meant to be for the Doctor," and he was like, "Oh, can't be helped." Sits down, starts scooping up his worms, but doesn't eat them, and goes zap zap zappy zap zap. Phaser fight. And he hasn't actually been taken over. It was obviously a cosmetic gill thing in his neck. And then they go into they follow, what was his name? Commander what was it?
Remick.
That's it, Remick. So then they having shot all the guys, all the admirals, they then go into where Remick is sitting in a big chair looking at a big display of boxy thing.
Yes, it's supposed to be the Alpha Quadrant and sort of separated into sectors, and actually that's a graphic that gets reused quite a bit. And yes, the chair that Remick sat in is actually the wheelchair from a previous episode in the first season, which was a very, very expensive prop, which they obviously had to get their money's worth out of.
And the Gribblies have left the admirals and have crawled along. And Picard and Picard and Riker have followed them, and they go up Remick's arm and then into his mouth, and it's a bit.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and he's also got like sort of a appliance on
neck
to make his neck bulge, which is really good. Yes.
And so Riker and Picard phaser him, and it's a bit grim, isn't it?
Well,
really?
you get full head explosion. Yes.
Well, it's not just that, but
unless you were watching the original BBC broadcast, in which case that was cut, of course, and all you got to see is was a phaser shot and then a bit of smoke and the corpse, and that was it. So you didn't even get to see the alien come out either. It's completely neutered it, but hey ho.
But no, you get a brief sort of skull with eyes
before
Kablooey, and then they have to go for the sort of the torso, and you get something. It's a bit alien-esque, bit like a chest burster, bit like a Predator.
Yes, it's a mixture between a Predator and Alien, basically, isn't it? It's not a bad bit of effects work. I mean, clearly it's somebody that hand sort of puppetry work, but I mean, it looks nicely icky, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and then they have to Kablooey that too.
And when you see the little scuttling aliens, when they come out of the dead admirals' mouths, that looks really effective as well. I don't know if it was CGI or stop motion, but it looked really good.
There was one point when it didn't. I think it was stop motion. It didn't look quite so good going up his arm.
Oh no, that was a puppet. Blatantly a puppet, I'm afraid. Yeah, the one that goes up Remick's arm and into his mouth. And yes,
it wasn't so good.
A bit sooty-esque.
No. Well, it turns out that having killed the Queen, the others can't survive.
So it's all conveniently over.
Yeah, so the mighty Queen is back on his feet.
Yeah, he's the only admiral to survive, apparently.
And Remick was in the process of sending a message. And they found out what it was, and it was a beacon. Mm-hmm. Supposedly to attract more of them, which is...
Yeah, so it sort of ends on a cliffhanger, which is then never resolved, because they forget about this story in the future. It does get mentioned in The Drumhead.
Oh, right.
When it's one of the things that's thrown at Picard when he's effectively on trial. But no, there's no follow-up on this idea that there are these aliens out there somewhere that are going to try and take over the Federation again or something.
Or maybe they were assimilated by the Borg.
Well, maybe they were, yes. So did you like it?
I did.
Yeah, it was fun, wasn't it?
It was.
Yes, very action-packed.
Yeah.
It helps that at least we saw Quinn and Remick before, so it's not a whole new cast of characters just to get killed off in this story, but it may have helped if there'd been a bit more build-up, I don't know, but they weren't doing that sort of thing next gen, so there's no point complaining about that. You're right, it does have an excellent score, and it's a shame that the conspiracy turns out to be external rather than an internal one, but we will get that later on, so that's kind of the silver lining to that one, really. But for a first season episode, it's very, very good indeed.
It is very good.
And rather fun.
Yes.
Shall we find out what other people thinks?
Yeah.
So we've had some feedback from The Mark. Conspiracy, or so violent, so creepy, so much body horror, so dark and negative, it's the anti-Trek. First up, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to the orgs and listeners. Happy Christmas, The Mark.
Happy Christmas!
Okay, what did I just watch? I know it's Star Trek and this episode, it's awesome, but it's not Trek. This was the moment when I fell in love with The Next Generation as a kid, and why I have issues as an adult. It shows us Starfleet for the first time is more than just a few ships, when four captains meet under utmost secrecy and urgency. Conspiracy is the tensest and most unpredictable of Next Generation's first season, definitely. Starting with Keel's wide-eyed no when Picard asks their meeting can be done with less cloak and dagger sneakiness, and proceeding through the slowly building realisation that an alien threat has come from beyond and is now attacking by manipulating from within. Ironic that one of the most involving of Next Generation's first season is also essentially the anti-Trek storyline, in which a malevolent alien threat must be exposed and then destroyed with brute force, not to mention visceral reactions of unmasked disgust, particularly from Picard, and an ominous ending that's not at all reassuring. The reuse of Remick and Quinn from Coming of Age is great, and this might be the only episode of Trek where a man's head gets blown up quite so awesomely. I think you could be right. Conspiracy kicks some serious arse. Certainly the best of Season 1 and the episode that got me hooked on Next Generation. Also, it's in my view the best take on Heinlein's Puppet Masters. And it's also why I have some issues. It's also the anti-Trek episode. The graphic violence, I watched the uncut version before for the rewatch, set Phaser to hollow out Skull. Damn HD, the zero respect for alien life, even though they were trying to invade Starfleet. It seems rather non-Starfleet that Picard and Riker's response to an alien claiming to want peaceful coexistence was to grimace in disgust and preemptively kill it. That's not Starfleet, that's Warhammer 40,000's Inquisitors. Kill the alien, burn the heretic and purge the unclean.
Yep.
A setting where everyone is grim, dark bad guy at best. It's a great setting, it's not Star Trek. Well, arguably it's kind of Kirk era Star Trek, I think, but there you go. And worse, the episode perfectly sets itself up for a sequel that, alas, would never ever come on TV. I know Deep Space Nine had a novel, but no, I want a TV follow-up with the bugs. I would also note the Neutral Zone and Conspiracy had been swapped in the running order from the plan at the start. What a different show and second year onwards of Trek we would have had to the parallel universe hopping machine. Imagine a best of both worlds where the bugs infest Picard, as we know that the Borg were initially conceived as an insectoid race, and that these parasites would have been the first wave of invasion. They couldn't do it because of cost. As to the gore and tone, etc., it was a major backstage argument between Rick Berman, of all people, who backed the gory ending, despite the objections of Maurice Hurley. And at one point, Roddenberry outright vetoed this story, as the original idea was that the Genu was a cabal of officers wanting to seize power. But Roddenberry didn't want Starfleet characters behaving that way, so it got rewritten as evil parasites, which is a lot more simplistic. We had to wait until Deep Space Nine Homefront Paradise Lost to see the original concept realised. Add to that a writer's strike hit at the very end of the season, forcing several episodes to air in second and third draft form, so Gene never had the legal right to tone it down further as he wanted to. You can see this in the opening scene where Riker tells Geordi to increase speed to warp 6 and Geordi replies, "Aye sir, full impulse." Yeah, that struck me as weird. Yeah. We only seek peaceful coexistence with your spine. Check the neck of anyone that compliments your posture. Next, the Neutral Zone, or I don't want to tip my hand and how much I ... Ah, well done, sir. Some suspense and mystery. Yes, it's certainly untypical.
Yeah.
But rather good for that, I think. I mean, yes, their reaction is not your usual Starfleet reaction. No. Normally it would be there'd be a long conversation and phasers would definitely be a last resort rather than the first resort. But on the other hand, on the basis that they're talking about the whole of Starfleet Command being infiltrated in this way, they're obviously completely compromised, so they've got to react quite quickly. Okay. And we've also had feedback from the Pie Man. Hurrah!
Hello orgs, Murray the Pie Man here to talk about Conspiracy. First of all, a Happy New Year to the both of you, although when you receive this it won't be New Year, but when it goes out it'll be New Year, so Happy New Year to everyone out there in podcast land. Anyway, Conspiracy. What a cracking episode this is. Odd for the tail end of Season 1, we have an episode where it does seem like there's a massive conspiracy within Starfleet. I always loved this idea. I don't know why, I've got a real liking of Starfleet falling apart or cracks showing or the weaknesses in it. I know it's always portrayed as just this nice utopia and I've never quite bought that. I always like the idea that there could be something bubbling under. There's conspiracies and that sort of thing always going on and just being foiled before we hear about them. It's probably why I really like the Homefront, I think it is, sort of series of episodes in Deep Space Nine later on. Of course, this conspiracy turns out to be an alien infiltration by weird, crazy brain bug things. And yeah, overall the episode's really quite good. It's got a lovely tense atmosphere. You know, you do have a feeling that the crew don't know who they can trust. They don't know what's going on. They're trying to work out, but in the meantime, who do they report to? It's actually really good. It gives a good sense of tension and unease. And the bugs are suitably creepy. It does sort of, when it comes to head, it kind of rattles along fairly quickly in sort of the last sort of act or so. And of course we have that very famous cut by the BBC, gory death, very non-Trek. I get the idea that while the creature was saying we seek peaceful coexistence, it didn't seem that way from all the creepy infiltration and whatnot. But yes, the scene where Riker and Picard phaser the hell out of the thing, and you've got dissolving faces and exploding rib cages. You know, wow, for tea time television, that's quite something. So yeah, overall, an episode I really enjoy. The only sort of a downside to the episode really is that you have this end scene with the signal being sent off into space, and they sent a signal off, we don't know what. Well, nothing happens of it. It doesn't get followed up ever again. I'd have quite liked, as a sort of daft reference later on, if you see this a planet these aliens have taken over, and we have a signal from the Federation. The first infiltration has been defeated. We must send more. We must infiltrate more. We must send more infiltrators. Just as a Borg cube appears overhead, and that's what happened in my head, at least. So yes, I really wish they had followed this up. They had all of Deep Space Nine and Voyager to do something with it, and they never did. But like I say, we're not going to let that ruin an episode. So overall, yeah, top episode, quite frankly. And yeah, it's quite surprising. I'd have been interested to see what would have happened if this had been the last episode of season 1. Rather than the Neutral Zone, because that would have very much seemed like it was setting up for something big in season 2. And I would have been really interested if they'd switched the episodes around, how I would have perceived them in the initial viewing. But anyway, I will be back shortly to talk about the Neutral Zone. Until then, bye for now.
Yeah,
yes, great minds think alike.
Clearly, yes, the idea of a Borg invasion, and also the idea of swapping over those last episodes as well. I'm not going to show my hand on that one, because we'll get on to the Neutral Zone in a minute. Oh, and I love the idea of weird, crazy brain bugs. That's what they're called now. Yeah, definitely. Super. So, shall we move on to the Neutral Zone then?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a dangerous thing to do, but let's go to the Neutral Zone. Raise the shields.
On the next episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Commander, look at this.
The crew discovers frozen survivors from the 20th century.
What's going to happen to us?
In the middle of a perilous mission to confront arch enemies.
You think that we attacked your outposts?
Could this feared encounter spark an explosive battle?
I recommend we go immediately to battle stations.
Find out on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
So the Enterprise is awaiting Picard's return from a meeting. Meanwhile, they've discovered an ancient capsule from Earth. Riker uncharacteristically shows no interest in it, but Data wants to investigate and is allowed to do so with Worf. It's nicely low-tech looking, and there's an amusing moment where Worf expects the door to automatically open. Pretty much belts his face on it. Feels that the room is full of stasis pods, some of which have been damaged, killing the occupants. But at least one woman has survived from what turns out to be the 20th century. Okay, this is clearly one of those things that happened we weren't aware of, like the Cybermen invading in 1996 and all that business.
And the Eugenics War.
Yes, and the Eugenics War in 1999 for that matter as well. Yes, Trek hasn't been really good, has it, at setting its dates? But never mind. You'd think they'd have learnt by now to set them further in the future. Later on they talk about television ending in 20-something or other, and you think, no, it's not going to happen either, is it? Silly brats.
No. TV is good.
So anyway, it turns out there are 3 survivors. We've got Claire Raymond, who's described as being a homemaker, which rather dates it. Ralph Offenhouse, who's a financier and general twat. And LQ Sonny Clemens, who's a musician and can't talk without there being a sting from the Dukes of Hazzard being played.
Why don't you come back later on? You and me will find us a couple of low-mileage pit wolfies and help them build a memory.
meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw. Been in trouble with the law since the day they was born.
Yeah. He's vaguely amusing.
They're all pretty stereotypical, and yes, at least one of them is vaguely amusing, but yeah, they all have their slightly annoying quirks, to say the least.
Yeah, but twat is the worst.
He's the worst. Anyway, transpires that when Picard returns, he immediately calls a briefing and says that basically the Romulans are back. Woo! Been ordered into the neutral zone because 2 Federation outposts have been destroyed and they've lost contact with some others, and the Romulans are assumed to be behind it. It's revealed they've had no contact with them for 50 years and have very limited info available on them, which is rather odd because surely they could just ask the Vulcans for information, but there we are.
Yeah, but the Vulcans are part of the Federation,
Yeah.
and the Vulcans haven't had contact with them for 50 years.
Maybe, but I mean, surely they learnt stuff about them before, back from the original series. I don't know. Well, they lost all the files somewhere? I don't know.
No, they've diverged, haven't they? So they
No, but they diverged before. The whole thing about the original series was that suddenly you meet the Romulans and everybody looks at Spock because he looks like them. I mean, the original series, they learnt about them, but somehow they've all forgotten about them again now.
It's not that they've forgotten about them, it's the fact they haven't learned anything at all in the last 50 years.
Okay, fair enough, and I guess things can change a lot in 50 years.
Yeah,
Anyway.
because apparently in 50 years' time there's no fucking telly.
Yes. Their orders are to avoid conflict and make contact if possible. Meanwhile, Dr. Crusher's defrosted Data's discoveries. Each had a terminal condition and they were frozen after they died. Which surely was a bit late. I thought the idea was to freeze people before they died.
I thought it was the point of death, actually.
Oh, yeah, well, just before, surely, but not afterwards. Surely afterwards it's
They're dead.
too late.
Oh, well.
And it was a cryonics fad, apparently, at the time.
Yeah, in
Picard
the
is
20th century, yeah, we missed that.
Picard's pissed off at Data, rather unjustly, really. Again, there's this whole thing about the same with Riker, isn't it? They can be bothered. Well, normally they're all about the discovery and investigating
and
stuff.
Picard's an archaeologist.
Yeah, quite. It's all part and parcel of the fact that this story didn't get an extra draft.
Oh, okay.
Because of the writers' strike, so it is very
Okay.
patchy for that reason. The woman is brought round and then faints after seeing Worf, and we get...
Oh, horrible, horrible, cheesy music.
Welcome to the 24th century.
Which is straight a comedy sting from the original series and so out of place.
I mean, it may as well go wah, wah, wah.
Yes. And obviously a tad careless to bring around in full view of somebody that clearly isn't human. Picard orders Riker to take charge of the guests and keep them out of his way, unsurprisingly. We'll find out that Riker isn't very good at that. Anyway, he brings the newcomers up to speed, and that includes Data revealing that it's the year 2364, which is the first time there's been a definite dating for the series. Apparently they were placed in stasis in orbit to avoid a power failure. Yeah, because putting somebody in orbit is far safer than keeping them on the planet and having backup systems on the planet.
And engineers.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, all our really precious stuff we put on the orbiting space station, because, well, duh, it's far safer there.
Mental.
Yes. Offenhouse wants to be put in touch with his bank, but Riker wants to take revelations slowly. It would have been far better at this point to said, money don't exist, you're fucked.
Yeah,
but
there's
never
no
mind.
money, fuck off.
Live with it. Troy is briefing Picard on the Romulans, and despite the fact that they haven't had any information in 50 years, she clearly knows a lot.
Well, she knows what's up to and including 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And she points out that they won't initiate conflict, which is something we'll come back to later on. Sunny orders a martini, which begs the question, will that be made of Simferhol by default?
I would have thought so.
In which case he's going to be a bit disappointed, I can't help feeling.
Well, isn't that why he goes to Crusher?
But we get another Dukes of Hazzard sting at this point. Riker answers a hail from the captain using a war panel, which you never ever normally do.
No.
At the most you get a titty tap, but I mean at this point they're not even bothering to do that. But again, it's just for plot reasons. Do you reveal their use to Offenhouse. Worf reveals he can get no answer from 9 local colonies, and in contradiction to what Troy has said about Romulans being famous for counter-attacking, Riker reckons their destruction would match the way Romulans operate, so clearly he's not been to the same briefing. He reckons they're luring him in to assess the strength of the Federation. Then they're hailed by Ralph, who's been using the panel. Captain goes down to see the guests, and Ralph is being a particular prick at this point about being rich and privileged. And unfortunately, Claire is crying, which is, let's pile the stereotypes on, yes.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, Picard needs to turn round and go, shut up, there's no money, sit down or I'll put you in the brig.
Mm-hmm.
His response to the crying woman is to get Councillor Troy. That's the correct response.
Well, yes.
His response to the twat is not correct. You either punch him in the face, tell him to fuck off, or because he's annoying, you just say, there is no money, grow up and go away!
Okay. Christmas spirit gone out window.
Made me very angry. Don't
really?
like him.
Troy offers to research Claire's family, more of which later on. Sonny goes to see Crusher, I think about getting some sort of alcoholic fix, but it does sound like he's talking about drugs, to be honest. It's very odd.
Well, it could be anything, but I mean, if the martini was synthahol, it would make sense.
Yeah,
he was
it would, wouldn't it?
expecting something, didn't get it.
Didn't get the kick. And he very kindly pats her ass on the way out.
Oh, that makes me so cross. And she just sort of looks at him. Now, maybe it's just because...
Yeah, that sort of behaviour is so alien to them.
That she just doesn't know what to do. But I was just like, oh, fuck off. You know, he should be in the brig as well, or lamp him.
And then we discover from freeze-framing the screen that Troy's research reveals Claire is related to the actors who played the Doctor.
Cool.
Yes, I'll have a pick of that up on Dumbler. Data sees Sonny and observes he's not struggling to settle in like the other two, and that's because he's laid back, apparently. They discover Outpost Delta 05, catchy name, has been scooped off the planet.
Like so much ice cream.
Well, indeed.
Sorry.
Where's that one come from?
My fevered brain.
Okay. What was the intention that the attack on the outpost would be a precursor to the Borg being introduced? Originally that would have happened at the beginning of Season 2, but the writer's strike meant that it ended up being much later on in Season 2 that we heard more about the Borg. Sonny has a guitar replicated by Data, and Ralph decides he wants to know what's going on, and he leaves to find the captain. Another colony has been discovered in identical condition, and Riker counsels battle stations, but Picard only allows yellow alerts.
Because presumably the alarm annoys him less.
Yeah, well, it's a rare announcement of that status. And there's some groovy music similar to the Klingon music ramping up the tension. And then as Ralph heads to the bridge, we see a science officer with one of those scamp things, and that was Gene Roddenberry's assistant, Susan Sackett.
Assistant in inverted commas.
Yes, quite. Worf's picked up a disturbance, and it's an inference that it's a cloaked Romulan ship. Picard holds fire. The improved cloaking device can't be detected, so that was them trying to provoke the Enterprise into firing first. Riker orders Ralph to be taken off the bridge when he butts in, because he's turned up. But the security dudes just stand and gawp as a warbird decloaks.
Oh, fucking useless twat.
So we finally get our Romulans 35 minutes into the episode, which is
during
slightly
the point at
frustrating.
which I'm shouting at the TV screen, take the twat away! Put him in the fucking brig!
This is, of course, our first appearance of the new Romulan warbird, and it's a lovely design.
With a hole in the middle.
It's a polo of a ship, yes. Now, apparently, originally, it would have just had the upper sweep. There wouldn't have had the connection at the bottom. By the original design was a lot more, bird-like, actually, logically enough. But apparently the powers that be didn't like that so much, so that's how we've ended up with the shape we have. But it's still nice.
It just looks
very
like there's
distinctive.
Something belongs in it. Do you ever see a Romulan warbird with another
something
ship?
in the inside?
Yeah.
No, you don't actually, but yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Right. We're reminded of the circumstances of Worf becoming an orphan, and he's reluctant to obey the captain in opening hailing frequencies. Eventually, the hail is answered by Commander Tabok, who's played by Mark Alamo. Hooray!
Hello, Gold Cart.
Yes. And we see our next generation Romulans in all their quilted glory, which, of course, is a hangover from the original series. They had quite quilted, but now they've got extra shoulder pads. And
they've got upper tog.
And a bit bubbles on their foreheads that they never used to have. And there's a nice, you only ever get to see the sort of bridge on the view screen, but there's the view screen, but there's stuff going on in the background.
There is.
It's really well, cleverly done. That gives you a real idea of sort of depth and size of the ship, because it's supposed to be much, much bigger than the Enterprise. Ralph makes a correct assessment of the Romulans' lack of idea of how the colonies have disappeared, which apparently qualifies him to stay on the bridge indefinitely, much to Amory's annoyance. Picard suggests an alliance, and there's a nice speech from Taybock.
Captain Picard, because your actions are those of a thoughtful man, I'll tell you this. Matters more urgent caused our absence. Now, witness the result. Outposts destroyed, expansion of the Federation everywhere. Yes, we have indeed been negligent, Captain. But no more.
Commander, we have made some progress here. Let's not ruin it with unnecessary posturing.
Your presence is not wanted. Do you understand my meaning, Captain? We are back.
Which is quite cool. Troy manages to find a surviving relative of Claire for her to go and see when they get back. And Picard has arranged the visitors to transfer to the USS Charleston, which I'm sure is a very swinging ship. Not necessarily in that sense. Ralph finally finds out there's no money. And what's the challenge in life if you can't gain money? And Picard comes out with the standard, it's all about self-improvement stuff. Riker expresses a desire to have learned more from the visitors from the past, but Picard...
Now he wants to know.
Yes, now he wants to. Right at the beginning of the episode, couldn't give a damn about them, but yeah. But Picard reminds them that the crew, that their mission is to go forward into the future, which I guess is a nice season end. So there we go. That's our episode. As I say, it was a bit of a rush job due to the writer's strike, and it would have probably been a bit more polished otherwise. But there is that sort of nice sort of lead into the Borg later on, so continuity-wise it's quite cool. Yes, the Romulans only appear in the last 10 minutes, but their threat hangs over the rest of the episode quite nicely. And yes, the 20th century characters can get very tiresome, but it's a nice tease for the presence of the Borg and reintroduction to the new Romulans and their shiny new ship. So overall, I was a lot more pleased with it than clearly Anne-Marie was.
I was not happy.
Didn't do your blood pressure any good, did it?
No. No. Silence the twat or send him away.
Well, we'll have to change that one.
Oh. I mean, the Romulan bit, yes, you don't see them for ages, but that kind of fits with Romulans. Do you know what I mean? All cloak and dagger and padding and so. That aspect of it, for me, wasn't a problem. The fact that they turned up so late, it kind of fits with Romulans. I like the ship, even though it looks like it's missing something. Something should be docking in it or something. But, you know, it's still cool, and you've got to remember that this is the first time you've just seen it. And I like the interplay between Tebock and Picard. So the Romulan aspect is good. You know, right from the start with the build-up and what do we know, what we don't know, and crew are conflicting each other because it's just all about the lack of information. All of that, like. Twat, don't like.
Yes. Okay.
So for me, it's sort of like something like 5 out of 10 because it's half of a good episode. And the other half, if the other half was just boring, it would tip it. But the other half makes me too cross.
All right. Shall we find out what the Mark thinks?
And the Mark writes, the neutral zone, or after a 300-year nap you'd be cranky, and achievement Romulans unlocked. The writers took 2 story pitches and simply filmed them, without bothering to develop a script for either one that would fulfil the requirements for an actual episode of television. To call the neutral zone half-bait would be an understatement. It's quarter-bait, but with the aforementioned strike it could have been a ton worse. In story A, Data and Worf beam onto a drifting space relic and find 3 cryogenically frozen survivors from the 20th century. They bring them to the Enterprise and revive them. Cue culture future shock, and it's a non-starter. The storyline involving 20th century Americans waking up in the 24th century is even more of a non-starter. We're given 3 characters that wake up and scarcely react to the new world that surrounds them. At most, their reactions are bland and obvious. Because these are 3 exceptionally uninteresting guest characters. I'm going to have to comment on Starfleet's atrocious security again. Why does the turbo lift allow mere passengers to access the bridge, a critical area of the ship?
Yes.
Very, very good point.
Yeah.
Also, Picard, who loves history with his archaeology hobby, here he is history in the flesh. People who can give first-hand accounts of life in the 20th century. And he isn't even the least bit curious.
No, he's just pissed off.
I get he has other things on his mind.
Yes.
But still. In Story B, the recent mysterious devastation of Federation and Romulan outposts along the neutral zone promised some new rumblings from the Romulan Empire. After a 50-year gap of having not come into contact with the Federation, indicators are they might be returning as a possible Cold War threat. Hold the phone! What about the plot from Angel 1 where the Enterprise was supposed to rush off the neutral zone to ward off a Romulan attack? But if we ignore the throwaway line, and I choose to as Angel 1, you...
Yes, not a great episode.
It does a great job of creating an ominous overtone to reintroduce the Romulans. We never find out what happened in that 50-year gap. On the bright side, the Romulans are back from obscurity and available for future episodes. Beyond that, there's very little insight or point to any of this, except for Troy's scouting report about the Romulan persona, reported to be arrogant and more likely to test the enemy with mind games and vague threats before resorting to force. Unfortunately, this makes for a long setup and a non-payoff where the Romulans literally say, "We're back," and then turn around and fuck off. A Romulan trait we come to see a lot over the past 4 years. Looking at you, sailor. There are some nice moments.
I've got an essay forming in my mind now. Romulans, the most impotent race in Star Trek.
There are some nice moments, like when Picard yells at Ralph the banker for using the intercom. Banker asks him why there's no lockout if it's only to be used for official business. As someone who's been rolling my eyes at the lack of safeguards on the ship, it's nice to see someone call them out.
Yeah.
Picard's answer of self-discipline wasn't satisfactory enough either. No, that's true, actually, because Lwaxana Troi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when she does...
And again, you've got families on board. All those kids aren't going to be that well-disciplined, are they?
2-year-old.
Yeah. Put on the pan.
Poo!
Need poo! Captain, need poo!
Poo! Poo! Ha ha! Poo! Poo! Ha! Poo! Captain Picard! Ha ha! Poo!
Captain Picard! And we have the episode title. Okay, carry on.
Make it so.
No! Don't ruin Star Trek for me.
Sorry. Anyway, I've got to find where I am in the Mark's feedback now. I've gone off a bit of a...
Just slightly.
Slight tangent. Sorry. Oh, actually, he actually says his next words were self-discipline on a ship with kids. Often used to transport other races. Is that seriously it? The Warbird decloaking. A very sexy ship. The camera work making sure to put it in the foreground and therefore imposing compared to the Enterprise was a nice touch. However, there is a funny twist to this tale in the novels. They're not canon, are they?
Well, it depends. It's canon these days, but...
In the novels, it was just that whenever anybody talks about the novels, they're always shit, like that 30-year-old Star Trek captain and things. Although that Garak one...
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, you can't completely discount novels on the basis that, there are one or two really good ones, the Garak being one. Was it a
Stitch in Time?
Stitch in Time. Oh,
that's an awesome
Do
book.
Need to reread that soon, yeah.
Sorry, lost my place again.
We're going off on tangents all over the place here. Sorry, Mark.
Sorry. In the novels, Ralph would return.
Oh, God. You're going to rush out and buy that one now, aren't you, off eBay?
Well, yes, to remove copies from the universe and put them in a shredder. Debtor's Planet by W.R. Thompson as the Federation ambassador to the Ferengi Alliance.
Well, obviously. Yet again, another good reason not to buy one of those.
Oh. He would hold the role over a number of books. And he puts that Wall Street background to good use when they underestimate him. Huh. If nothing else, I think this episode should get some credit for inspiring Futurama. Did it?
Well, the idea of Fry being frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Waking up in the future. But I mean, that's a hoary old sci-fi cliche anyway.
Yeah. Haven't they got it in Babylon 5, but a lot better?
Really?
Some woman wakes up, doesn't she? Probably ends up shagging Franklin.
Possibly. Can't remember. Yes, they find... And she's got that alien inside her, hasn't she?
That's
yes,
right. She
yes.
lost her husband and shags Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
But it happens in every sci-fi show. It's a fairly
What? Everybody
standby.
shouts Franklin?
No. No,
It's
you
like
get.
everybody loves Raymond in the future.
Yeah, everybody's frozen.
Jags Franklin.
There's always a frozen people from the past episode to highlight how different things are in the future.
Ah.
The difference is Futurama made an entire show about that concept, but there you are.
Sorry, the mark. We're going again. He says it's
We
not-
will finish your feedback.
We will.
Possibly before New Year's, but there's no guarantee.
And the mark continues. It's not great, but let's not forget this was filmed in 1987. Some other shows of 1987: The Cosby Show,
Yay.
A Different World,
Who?
Growing Pains,
What?
Who's the Boss,
I don't know.
Golden Girls.
Oh, God, Golden Girls. Oh, I'd managed to forget about that. Thank you for the reminder.
She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote. Whee.
It's a forgivable episode, given the events of the time. A first draft rush job. This could have been a disaster.
Well, let's face it, it's a better season ending than Shades of Grey.
Oh.
That puts it in some perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's imperfect but enjoyable, personally, but...
No.
Yes, you don't.
I enjoy the Romulan bits.
Mm.
Don't enjoy the twat.
That doesn't say nothing. Right, let's find out what the Pie Man thinks. Does he like the twat? No!
That sounds like a really personal question. Do you like the twat?
It's that point on Christmas Day when you've had far too much alcohol. Alternative, it's that point on the podcast where we've had too much alcohol. Don't need seasonal excuses. Let's find out what the Pie Man thinks.
Hello again, Orgs. Murray the Pie Man here to talk about The Neutral Zone, the episode, not the geographical feature in space. Anyway, a bit of an odd one, this one. I've never quite been sure what to make of it. It always seems a bit like two episodes sellotaped together. Your main plot is actually a sort of fairly by the numbers, people from 21st century are defrosted and have to adapt to life in the Federation. It's played somewhat for laughs. They do have a good couple of barbed at 21st century, or 20th, 21st century lifestyles. I did like the banker sort of being told, no, nothing you do is important anymore, there's no money at all, you're effectively useless, which is roughly how I feel about bankers at the moment anyway. So, I could call myself advanced. So yeah, there is sort of that bit kind of played for laugh. It's played a bit light, but there's also the sort of the other plot running through it, which is the dark plot of bases being destroyed along the neutral zone, and the Enterprise is obviously having to go and investigate. What I did like, this sounded awfully like a precursor to a Borg invasion. The description of how the bases have been destroyed. And I thought that was a really nice reference, which would obviously be followed up later on in season 2. It's weird to think. I'm not sure if it was intentional groundwork or if this just happened to be a thing that they wanted to make a mystery and later on thought they could use for season 2. I'd be interested to see which way round the thinking went, but it's nice nonetheless. So that plot is obviously the crew encounter the Romulans for the first time in the series. And again, while I talked last time about it would have been like if Conspiracy finished the series, there is a good point with this episode finishing, in that we now have the Romulans back. And yes, it's not a Romulan war starter or anything, but the Romulans are back as a force, which is interesting and obviously didn't really get followed up as well as it could have, as we know now, sort of in series 5. But overall, it's not a brilliant episode. It's not maybe one of the classics. It's fairly competently executed. I think it does suffer a bit from being what does seem a bit like two episodes that are stuck together, or kind of, I think while it's called the Neutral Zone, it really should be called the Frozen People, because that's at least what I got from it, was, it was more about the cryogenically frozen people in the situation in the Neutral Zone. But other than that, actually, I think season 1 closed quite strongly, considering some of the absolute dross that was in it. We could have had porn planets again. So yeah, overall, it's not as good as Conspiracy, I'd say, but still not a bad episode. There's definitely worse episodes of Star Trek you could watch. So that's about all I've got to say about that. I think I've said Happy New Year to everyone, so I'll just hope you all had a good festive season, and I will be back to do feedback continuing in the new year. Until then, enjoying the podcast, do keep up the good work, and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's very much 2 episodes sewn together, and yes, I completely agree. It's a relatively strong ending for season 1, considering some of the dross that's gone before.
Yeah, but it still isn't as good as Conspiracy.
No, but I think it's a better season ending because there is that sort of threat of the Borg for the future. But yeah, there we are. And next time we shall be recording on Thursday the 9th of January
2014.
Welcome to the world of the future. To carry on with the Futurama theme, we will be watching, we're back into season 5 again, and we'll be watching The Outcast, which is the sort of episode that was always supposed to be a gay allegory, but I seem to remember it didn't quite work out that way.
I always thought it was a trans allegory.
Yeah, well, it's curious. Yes, it's well, I can't remember that much of it. Anyway, we shall discover.
Yes.
And Cause and Effect, Deja Vu all over again. It's another episode, but I seem to remember quite a good one, where time repeats itself a lot.
Oh, I hate them.
But I think this is done well, I seem to remember, so...
Yeah, I hate them on principle.
Okay, great. Just showing your hand slightly there for next time, but there we go.
Oh, come on, it's better than me showing my hand over, what was it?
Well, you did an entire episode review the other time, yes.
I had a rant.
Yes. Anyway... Thank you to our contributors and to everybody who's contributed over the past year, and we'll see you in 2014. We're hoping to have this up before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Although I understand iTunes is being a bit slow at the moment because people are on holiday or something. God, how dare they? But anyway, you can contact us on the Geek Planet online forums
and at broadcast.tumblr.com.
Or you can email us or send MP3s to broadcast@geekplanetonline.com.
On Twitter, I'm ammo_purple.
And I'm rev_org. Splendid stuff. Take care, folks. Cheery bye.
Bye. Happy Christmas.
The broadcast is brought to you by those awesome people at geekplanetonline.com.
And alcohol.
Any sound clips used are for illustrative purposes only, and no infringement of copyright is meant.